This is the Pixel Watch 3, and not sure if you've noticed, but this is actually the first Google Smartwatch that I review. Yes, I did have the first two generations, and I will admit that I did my best to try to use them, but a few things just didn't work out. The first watch in particular was a gigantic leap, not just for Google, but genuinely for Wear OS. This whole idea of actually creating a smartwatch around the Fitbit was just genius. That watch alone set the standard that all others are following today when it comes to specs and performance, but the compromises in taste were the problem for many. It only came in one size, which didn't include me, and the battery life was just atrocious. The Pixel Watch 2 was built on the same platform and a ton of improvements, but dragged some of the problems with it and introduced new ones. The material got cheaper, which I have no problem with when it came to aluminum, but the display was just a deal breaker. A Fitbit that favors runners but then struggles with polarized sunglasses should simply not exist. It wasn't until this third generation and the introduction of a second size option that I was really compelled to fully commit. So much so that I haven't taken it off ever since, which, yes, means that it even replaced my Galaxy Watch Ultra. It really didn't take much for me to notice that this was an overall far better experience than I was expecting, though, yeah, it's still not perfect. I'm Jaime Rivera with Pocketnow, and let me explain to you why in our full review. Okay, so just to clarify, even if this watch did grow up, you're still pretty much getting the option to go smaller if that's your thing, and that's just one of the many benefits. This means you're not forced to pick a size in order to get a specific set of features. When it comes to the hardware, I do think that this is like the newer generation of the Moto 360 that we all loved many years ago. A minimalistic screen that's just completely uninterrupted by bezels is the natural progression to a watch back then that was just so iconic and already looked like the future. As a result, the Pixel Watch 3 almost mimics a water drop, which, by the way, the company demoed during their launch. It's just all screen, which then gets matched by a casing of polished aluminum that's pretty minimalistic at the bottom. About the only thing I don't like is this band mechanism. It takes some getting used to snapping it on or off, which also makes it hard for you to find third-party bands. After just a few weeks, the current Google band already feels a tad sticky after daily workouts, so yeah, keep that in mind. About the only solution I'd recommend is from Spigen, but then again, I'm still waiting for those to become available. The display is the bigger story here, as it's just gorgeous in every way. Across the board, there's 16% smaller bezels and a brighter 2000 nits that can go as low as 1 nit, and from 60 to just 1 hertz when needed. It means a ton of more information on your screen and the possibility for more complete watch phases. Going 45mm results in technically getting 40% more screen real estate than before, making it far more comfortable to read for people like me, meaning over 40. The overall result is an Aqua display that I can easily call the best on a Wear OS watch. The Galaxy Watch Ultra might be better, at least in paper, but wear polarized sunglasses and you'll see why I prefer to go Pixel. Also, notice how the dimensions almost match that Ultra if you were to not consider the beefier bezels, but then try to not knock it around, as this is still just Gorilla Glass 5, it's not Sapphire. Now, when it comes to internals, the watch is a bit more of a mixed bag, which you might not necessarily notice at first. See, the Snapdragon W5 Gen 1 that powers the show is, yes, 2 years old. That said, its 4mm architecture is pretty advanced even for today's standards, and its hybrid architecture matched with a Cortex M33 coprocessor adds sensing with efficiency. There's 2 gigs of RAM, 32 gigs of storage, which, yes, already trails behind the competition. Still, this variant I have offers LTE, a newish version of Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, UWB, is IP68 water and dust resistant, and brings a pretty decent battery that now charges faster, though apparently the endurance is the same regardless of the size you pick. Also, for those sensing efficiencies that I mentioned, this watch is about more than just what your eyes can see. As any typical Fitbit, heart rate is being tracked permanently, which is a huge departure in accuracy from even leading competitors. Anyone comparing endurance of this watch to any other should consider just how much data is being captured every second. We also have tracking for oxygen saturation, electrical sensors for ECG, a skin temperature sensor, and more. Like, seriously, this watch is very complete. Now, the reason I say you might not even notice is because Wear OS on this watch is exactly what it should be on every watch. See, Samsung, for example, brings its Tizen-like feel, and OnePlus also goes pretty unique, which are all pretty good, but I feel this approach to the UI was far better thought out. Here we have the benefit of a rotating crown that also doubles as a back button or a way to call on your apps, and we have a secondary key for extra interaction. If anything, I do wish that we had an extra button to go back, or that you can map more commands to a press and hold on the crown. Right now you can only press and hold the top key for the Google Assistant because, yes, oddly there is no Gemini here yet, which is odd since you have the animation when the watch boots. Still, I do prefer this approach of pressing the crown for apps and the top key for recents, which then becomes a pause button while you're running. I also like notifications as a swipe along with controls, though I do feel that having notifications at the top and controls at the bottom would have done a better job with our muscle memory, as that's how we deal with smartphones. Tiles from the sides are cool, but this is yet another area where I wish these could be stacked into smaller tiles for efficiency, as we see on the Apple Watch with its Smart Stack or widgets on a Garmin, which also benefit from a bottom placement instead of side to side. That said, once you get used to the user interface, there's a lot to like. This watch breezes through the interface, and I love how it doesn't yank you from whatever you're doing with a notification. Everything is subtle unless you're not using it. It's as every smartwatch should be, which almost feels like an Apple Watch, but sort of better. See, this whole Fitbit integration means this is not just any smartwatch that can do fitness. Instead, I'd call this the closest conventional smartwatch to a Garmin, which makes it more of a smart fitness computer. The watch comes with 6 months of Fitbit Premium if that's your thing. Still, for most people, I still think that the base services are pretty awesome. I've tested this watch against my Garmin Epix Gen 2 and even the Galaxy Watch Ultra in some of the roughest running conditions, and its GPS is just as accurate, and that's even while lacking the dual band GPS functionality. I've tested it next to an Apple Watch Series 10 doing weight training, and I feel it does calorie burn calculations better. I've also tested it next to that same Apple Watch in runs, and it comes on top. I've even used it with my Peloton, and it syncs the effort score just as well as an Apple Watch does, which is better than a Galaxy Watch. In a nutshell, this is what I mean by saying it's like an Apple Watch, but better in many ways. Even the fitness watch faces are more logical in how they vertically stack heart rate and how logical they are about giving you step count while you're walking, for example. Things that are just common sense. Now, when it comes to fitness, I'd say that there are other things that should improve. For example, the daily readiness score, for example, is a good competitor to Garmin's body battery, but sadly it's not variable. You get a daily score, and whatever load you add during the day doesn't change it, which kind of defeats its purpose. The cardio load calculator is then pretty useful, but as opposed to a Garmin, this watch doesn't tell you what the ideal blend of high aerobic or low aerobic workouts will help you improve your fitness level. They just give you the stacked information. Lots of stuff that, again, just needs to be portrayed better because the watch does the best job in Wear OS in compiling all this data. Also, an interesting quirk of this being a Fitbit is that owning more than one tracker becomes a problem. You have to unpair this watch from the Fitbit app and switch to another, though that doesn't apply to the rest of Wear OS, so that's kind of weird. Actually, the process of switching this watch to another Android smartphone was pretty simple. I went from a Pixel 9 Pro to a 9 Pro Fold in less than 5 minutes, which takes a lot less than if you try to switch watches on the Fitbit app. And then there's the case of endurance, where all this information strives on. Yes, I've been able to sleep with the Pixel Watch 3 on most nights, and yes, the battery does last for you to sleep with it, and that's all while doing an hour and a half of workouts a day, and then charging it while I shower. Now, do I wish it lasted longer? Yes, because I'm not sure how well this watch can survive, say, a full marathon. Clearly, it's made to last the above average person in daily activity, but I think it lacks the pro name for a reason. It's just not necessarily made for pros. Last but not least, there's the pros and cons of this watch and its ecosystem. Obviously, this comes to complement anyone owning a Pixel, so if you've got the phone and the buds, then yes, this will feel pretty relatable. It's not necessarily perfect though, as the fact that there is a voice recorder app on the watch doesn't mean that you'll get the same experience as on the phone. Now, the con is that Fitbit has always been a walled garden, and that doesn't always play in this watch's favor. For example, my current Pixels don't even bring Google Fit installed, so whatever information you had there pretty much got stranded there. If I were to use a Garmin with an iPhone and then switch to an Apple Watch that same day, Apple Health will carry those activities over, but that doesn't really happen here. Something to keep in mind in case you want to switch over or in case you wouldn't want to stay for the long run. To conclude, let me just say I never thought I'd be mixed about using this watch. I love the hardware, I love the software, I love its fitness accuracy, I love its Fitbit benefits, and best of all, I love the fact that it no longer feels like a half-baked experiment. Generation 3 is really where it's at, as this product feels more mature than almost every other Wear OS watch I've used, or smartwatches for that matter. I don't like the proprietary bands, which pretty much make options dependent on how successful the watch is, and we know that hasn't necessarily been the case. I don't like that Fitbit limits quick watch switches even between compatible devices. I don't like that Fitbit is not a Wear OS benefit, which means switching away from a Pixel watch pretty much means your information gets stuck there. It leaves me in this weird situation because I'm not sure if you've noticed how some other watch owners behave. With the Apple Watch, I like being able to switch to my Garmin, get my half marathon done noting that that watch has better endurance, and then switching back to my Apple Watch for everything else. Doing this is either not easy or pretty impossible with the Pixel Watch, which then lacks the versatility of not necessarily being the best watch for rougher or prolonged activities. Bottom line, sure, I'd blindly recommend the Pixel Watch 3 to anyone who wants the best Wear OS experience and doesn't need to switch away from this watch for more intense activities. Its price and features are just too good, but then again, so long as you know you're going to live on this ecosystem for a bit if fitness matters to you. Let me know if you agree with our assessment in the comments down below, and while you're at it, follow us on social media and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this one. You can also follow me on my personal handles to see me actually like a Pixel Watch for the first time ever. Please give this video a thumbs up if you like what you saw. I'm Jaime Rivera. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you on the next one.